Hello.
Hello.
What?
Is it? I don't go any further.
Maybe I was asleep.
Hey, maybe one. I'm fine. So you took balcony off already? No, it's on there. What? Oh, well, yeah, right in front of my face. Okay, I would like to call to order the recess meeting of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen for May the 13th. As far as the agenda goes, I have two changes. If you will remove 2A, and if you will add at 2A to consider approving a second date for the car show of June 14th. Okay, those are the only two changes I have. Ashley, do you have anything else?
No, ma'am, I didn't have anything.
All right, could I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, as we added at 2A, the car show is scheduled for this Saturday. And right now, there's an 80% chance of rain. And so they don't want to make the call on moving it until the day before. But I'm asking for your approval, all the same parameters as they have approved for this Saturday, May 17th, to also approve a rain date of June 14th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Next is request permission to approve a third-party advertising contract in conjunction with the city's contract with Viewpoint. You may remember that Viewpoint is the Dennis Quaid show that is going to come and film in Oxford, and we will end up with a final product that is a commercial that will be on lots of national broadcasts. For $5,000, they put together a marketing plan with a press release that gets that in the right people's hands. I think if we're spending the money to have the thing done, we certainly should spend $5,000 to make sure that we get the bang for our buck. So I'm asking for permission to approve that advertising contract.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission for an employee to attend the Municipal Judges Conference on May 28th through the 30th in Biloxi at an estimated cost of $1,300.
That's our new judge that we appointed the other night.
Brad Dagenall.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? John Crawley is requesting permission to consider the bids received for the North Lamar Molly Bar Roundabout project.
Yes, we opened bids last Friday for this project. We received only one bid for $3,061 and change, which is about 1.3 million over what our engineering estimate was. We would like to request to reject that one bid and re-advertise the project for bids with a more relaxed timeline. We had the original timeline set up for them to start the 1st of June when school was out and be done by the end of August by the time football season started in earnest. And that just scared them away. And so we're asking permission to reject this one bid and re-advertise for bids as soon as possible.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to consider the bids received for the South Lamar Pedestrian Improvements Project.
This bid came in a little bit better. This is the project to provide a pedestrian connection from Oxford Way north to the Belk Roundabout. $848,000 from Phillips Contracting Company is the low bid. It's within our budget and pretty close to our engineering estimate. Contractors are just so busy right now. It's hard for us to get a lot of competitive bids, but this is about as good as we could have hoped for. So I recommend we award it to them and let them go.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Discuss and adopt an interchange agreement with MDOT for Highway 6 and 7 interchanges. John?
Yeah, so at the last recess meeting in April, I think, a couple of you had asked about landscaping and beautifying or maintaining the interchange at Highway 6 and Highway 7. And MDOT actually does have a program for that called Adopt an Interchange, where basically you sign an agreement where we take responsibility to beautify and maintain the right-of-way at our cost, our responsibility, everything outside. So I just wanted to bring that to you and let you know that is an option should you choose to do that. There will also be obviously some budgetary obligations that go along with that. So those are things we'll want to consider.
Do we have estimates?
For the board's knowledge, MDOT currently completely stinks at all of it. Please, I repeat, they're terrible at maintaining anything. They don't mow but 1.5 times a year, they say. And so we already are paying a large amount of money to, we've contracted out the mowing of those interchanges that we're talking about. And we don't do the whole thing, but we do what, Mark?
10 or 15 feet.
Yeah, it's like 15 feet, I think, from the end of the shoulder in that we have on contract to be mowed. And Alderman had asked that we consider planting trees in those interchanges. That would mean we would then be responsible for mowing all of it, maintaining the shoulders of the road. Mark and I discussed kind of what financial commitment that would be, and probably $100,000 a year to be able to maintain the shoulders of the road and the paving of the, what do you call them, the interchange, yeah. And so, anyway, I would not recommend that we do it, but since we were asked to find out about that, we did. If anybody feels different, feel free to say.
Is that on the? Well, I didn't realize that included the paving of the off-ramps.
Maintaining the shoulder?
Well,
what
it
does
doesn't include
say?
the paving of the roads. It includes everything
Oh, I thought it said
outside of
maintaining the ramps.
Well, the ramps that are not part of the roadway, the asphalt and the gravel shoulders, MDOT would maintain. Would be responsible for everything that's green,
Cutting the
basically.
grass.
Cutting the grass, if you planted trees, you'd be responsible for planting them, maintaining them, pruning them, all those kind of things. Yeah, but the pavement would
I
still
thought
be.
it said that
MDOT.
we were responsible for the shoulders of the road.
Well, we'd have to keep those clear from landscaping, but they would be responsible for maintaining them. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, what it says is if you want it, they would let you. Of course, they would take everything that's green and you deal with it. And then they will keep their bush hogs off of it the one time a year before a big SEC game. They usually pop in and do it.
I think we'll talk about it during budget time, see if we can work it in. I'd rather the bush hog not be on it at all. If you look, see what they did last weekend.
What did they do
They
last?
started bush hogging in the rain.
Oh.
And rutted it up.
Mark, I don't know if you got somebody that
We
could
can
go there
get some
just-
quotes.
The thing that I think, it's just Johnson grass now, which grows about 6 inches a day, it's kind of what we've done now. It really, the university, they reseeded, sprayed everything out, they take the stuff, really don't contain it.
As much.
Added much, and so it would be a big initial undertaking. It's a lot of acreage, that's the biggest intersection, I think. That's the next intersection.
Would you say it's 20 acres?
Yeah, it's like maintaining the road, it's a huge chunk of land that, it would be expensive.
Well, what we can do is get prices for it and just have that as part of the budget discussion when we get there. All right,
Thanks.
discuss the FY 25-26 budget for Oxford Utilities Electric Division. Rob?
Here's a paper copy sent out last week.
Thank you.
If you will receive that.
We did.
We didn't have that from you. Now you got it. I'll follow along. Dave Hollis a copy. If I missed anyone, let me know. I've got extra copy. Yes, today we're talking about the fiscal year
26, Oxford Utilities Electric Division Budget. I've tried to produce it in the same format as in previous years, giving you the highlights and a budget message from the previous year from our highlights, and you talk about the hard spots we're facing, but also go over generally how the budget is shaped up. The budget for 26 proposes total spending of $821,803, offset by expected revenues of $26,821,925. So a $22 surplus there. The largest expense for Oxford Utilities is every year is purchased power. This year, I'm anticipating it to be 77% of our total revenues will be used to pay our TVA power bill. Our total operating expenses are projected to increase approximately 5.4% compared to last year's budget, and our margin, revenue less power costs, which is our margin, is expected to slightly decrease compared to fiscal year 25 budget. The reasons for these increases and decreases are mainly driven by inflationary pressures on materials and supplies and employee benefits, which increase every year. These increases will result in less funding available at the end of the day for capital projects in this year's budget that you'll see. And I think it will continue to be exacerbated over time. I'll go over a few highlights from this year. Stop me at any point with any questions. But the first one I'll mention again is that for a second year in a row, we were recognized by the American Public Power Association for a Certificate of Excellence in Reliability. We were the only utility in Mississippi that received that designation, and one of only 9 utilities out of the 153 local power companies of TVA. It's measured by System Average Interruption Duration Index, which is it's called SAIDI, and it's just a measurement of the average duration period for the customers throughout the year. And so we were in the upper quartile for the SAIDI ranking nationwide. Secondly, I'll talk a little bit about TVA and the issues they're having. In January and February, you may remember, the bulk electric system was tested with extreme cold weather again this year. Unlike, I guess it was December of 22, this time it proved to be resilient. TVA was able to meet the demand, but due to the electric load growth in the Tennessee Valley region and recent and planned retirements of older coal-fired generation units, they're not able to build new generation as fast as they are retiring old generation, and the growth in the valley, honestly, is, I think it's 3 times faster than the national average in the TVA region. We're not seeing quite that faster growth here in Oxford, but in Tennessee and Nashville, the larger cities, they're seeing a lot of growth. The bottom line is TVA is short on generation and relying on system purchases. Those are long-term contracts and short-term contracts that they acquire to meet peak demands during those times. This is a very hot topic right now. I serve on the TV PPA board as the Secretary Treasurer, and we're having constant meetings with TVA trying to figure out how they're going to address this issue, how we can help address this issue. We're going to try to be creative. The big issue is that TVA is capped at $30 billion by Congress from the 1970s. They can't borrow more than $30 billion by law. Right now, they're at $22 billion. To build a nuclear facility, it's $20 billion just in itself. To build a new gas-fired generating facility is $1.5 billion. So you can see those are going to add up quickly, and they're not going to be able to continue to build based on that current debt limit. And with the climate in Washington, D.C., nobody is going to agree on anything, especially not allowing TVA to increase their debt limit, because that will affect the overall national debt, which nobody wants to take responsibility for making an increase on that. So there's a lot of back and forth, and consternation in Washington. But ultimately, we're going to either have to partner with TVA to provide financing or to work with our Valley delegation in Washington to allow this debt limit to be increased. I think that $30 billion in today's dollars would be more like $140 billion. And so that's why we think it's unfair that they're capped at 30, because it restricts them from building what they need to provide us with the energy we need to avoid rolling blackouts and constant load curtailments, during peak demand times.
So Rob, you
Yes.
just said something, maybe a
Okay.
question. With the growth that we're experiencing, how much more can we supply
So
with our current system the way it is?
So our current system, we're limited geographically, as you know. We're served by 3 delivery points of TVA, and we've got mostly very thick feeder circuits because we're a very dense utility. I haven't heard anyone say that we're bumping up against our local capacity. I think the main issue is that during extreme weather events, whether that be 100-degree days in the summer or 5 to 10-degree days in the winter, TVA, we're having constant meetings once a day in the winter when they have these cold days. If they have a week of cold weather, we're going to meet every day to talk about how they're going to meet that demand, what they're anticipating, and if it's going to possibly get to ELCP step 50. That's the concern. That means rolling blackouts, which would ultimately lead, if they don't manage the peak, to disconnected substations. And they've got a list of who they would disconnect first, and hopefully we're not at the top of that list, but they won't tell us who is.
So we're okay.
Yes, locally, yes, as far as growth goes. And you'll see later in my budget, we experienced, I believe, is a 1.4% customer increase, number of customers. So we are growing, but it's very slow. But we are positively growing in the right direction. Any other questions on the TVA issues we face? Another issue has been the supply chain. Transformers and critical grid equipment, obviously they're difficult to obtain. They're very long lead times. Transformers are up to a year. Substation transformers are 3 years. And voltage regulators are 2 years. Prices of this equipment have increased 5 to 10 times since COVID occurred. Coming out of COVID, the demand went up, the prices went up. And so that is another reason our O&M costs are going up, because as we build more electric services underground and install pad-mounted transformers, we're spending more money to serve our customers. One positive note, many positive notes, but one positive note next is our EV fast charger station ranks a number 4 most used station in the Tennessee Valley. That's us compared to Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga. We've got the 4th most used station in the Tennessee Valley. I attribute it to our transient students and their parents and the game day atmosphere, but we get 11 or 12 charges per day at our EV station in the downtown parking garage. It's a great site. Get lots of compliments on it. We are near completion of our civil work that we've been working on at the Old Taylor Road substation. That civil work is setting the stage for a electric project where we will install voltage regulation at that substation, and that's one item I'm going to talk about in our capital spending description project. Another positive is our customer texting notification system, which we implemented in 2025. This allows us to reach out to our customers about service disruptions, whether it's a planned outage or emergency, and has become vitally important to our staff and customer base. It also allows us to text customers who are on our disconnect list, and so we no longer hang door tags on customers' homes when they're about to be disconnected. We text them, and that service is free compared to $25 to hang a door tag. So it's become, I guess, a much appreciated improvement for our customers who are on that list and need to be notified prior to disconnection. We send a bill, we send a late notice with the disconnect date, but we're happy to send a text notification as a follow-up reminder prior to the ultimate disconnection date. And it's very successful. We'll send the text to 100 customers a week and then ultimately have to disconnect 20 or 25 per week. And so that's a very high percentage of paying customers to avoid disconnection. Next, I'll talk about TVA's wholesale rate increase, which went into effect October 1st. It was 5.25%, which was a direct pass through to our customers. That's in addition to the 4.5% in 2023. This rate increase has caused our effective rate to go up. We at Oxford Utilities have not had a local rate adjustment, an increase on our residential class in 16 years. Just so you know, we've had no rate increases in 16 years, since 2009. We have the fourth lowest rates out of 28 utilities in the TVA region of Mississippi. We've got the fourth lowest.
Pretty impressive.
TVA obviously is wanting to build more generation. According to the partnership agreement, which we signed 4 or 5 years ago, they can't raise rates more than 10% in a 10-year period. And so in 2029, they're looking at potentially raising rates again on the wholesale side. But they desperately need the funding due to the reason I explained with the debt cap. We did complete 3 overhead to underground projects in fiscal year 25, the Molly Bar Road project, the Chickasaw Road, and Church Street. And due to increased material and labor costs, we are unable to fund as many conversions as we had gotten used to in the past because it's so expensive to convert overhead to underground, and our budget capital expenditures are limited. I mentioned about the rates a moment ago, and I'll go to the last item here. We did complete a pole inspection project on half of our distribution system, and we found a number of poles that have reached their end of life. That'll be a big focus for us, is changing out poles that have reached the end of their useful life, and that will not be cheap to change out these poles. And so we'll be working all year to do that, to get these poles changed out. The next page, you can see our organizational chart. Happy to answer any questions on that. We do have one vacancy currently in the electric division. It's a position for an apprentice lineman. On the next page, page 6, I'll be brief in our operational summary because I think you've heard some of this in the past, and I'll try to hit on anything that may be an update from previous years. If you have any questions about who does what, please stop me. Oxford Utilities Electric Division serves 10,469 customers as of March 31st. That's a 1.4% increase from last year. Additionally, we serve 16,519 water customers and 13,422 sewer, and we provide billing and customer service for 14,812 sanitation customers. That water number is an 11.1% increase from last year, mainly due to the addition of the Pumpkin Water Association, which was 1,250 customers. Under administrative, I'd like to mention that we've had no workers' compensation claims in fiscal year 23, 24, or 25. Working safely is our #1 goal. We want everyone to go home after a hard day's work. Under service department, I just want to mention that our 2 full-time meter readers, we used to have 3, now we have 2, are responsible for reading 26,988 meters per month. Most of those meters are either drive-by or automated meters, which are read daily and hourly. But at the end of the day, if they don't read through that automated system, these employees are out there finding that reading so we can have an accurate bill for our customers. On the next page, not a lot of change there in the customer support or electric operations division this year. So I will discuss the financial and operational statistics and ratios on page 8. In that table, I've provided the numbers for the last 6 fiscal year end-of-year reports in our TVA report. And you can just kind of look at the different numbers and how things are changing over year after year. Essentially, in 2024, we saw a pretty substantial increase in O&M due to what I mentioned earlier, inflationary impacts. Our cash balance dropped slightly in fiscal year 24. Looks like it was 8.6, and now it's 7.7. And even with customer growth, the number of employees has dropped over the 5 years due to streamlining processes and increased workloads. 6 years ago, we were at 31, now we're at 29. As I mentioned, we have 1 vacancy that we plan to fill. we essentially never filled back that apprentice lineman position after COVID. But by filling that position, we would go to 2 4-man crews on our construction side and a 3-man right-of-way trimming crew. So we wouldn't have to trim out, or wouldn't have to contract out the right-of-way trimming as much as we are now if we had a 3-man active crew, which we do. Any questions on the ratios? We currently have no long-term debt at Oxford Utilities. It's another highlight there. On page 9, you've got a chart showing the retail energy sales year over year for the last 4 years. Essentially, we'll see that the cumulative to date kilowatt hour sales are tracking along with last year's sales. While sales volume may vary month to month due to weather conditions, cumulative annual sales volume is very stable and reliable and provides us with a dependable source of income. On the next page is revenue less power cost. This chart shows the revenue that's left over after we pay our TVA power bill for the last 4 years. Revenue less power cost is tracking slightly lower than previous years, mainly due to a low load factor in January. Our demand was quite high during that cold snap, but then the rest of the month was pretty mild. And so that leads to an imbalance in load factor. We didn't have the number of kilowatt hours to balance out the demand. We had to pay to TVA for the energy sales. But I'm sure it'll pick up by the time the fiscal year ends on the revenue less power costs. On the following page is a chart of residential average use. This is showing our residential customers and their average monthly use and also cumulative use over the year. You'll see that it's tracking along with prior years. It's very stable. It's a little bit of a variance. On the next page, our operation and maintenance, which I've explained a couple times earlier, it is tracking higher than the last 2 fiscal years, mainly due to material prices, on equipment prices, and also employee costs. And this O&M expense increase directly affects our net income and funding that's left over for capital expenses on the system. Page 13 is our 26 budget review there. Goes through all the sales and expenses, earnings and taxes, and then the bottom line is available for capital projects, the net income. We project a slight decrease in margin and an increase in operating expenses, resulting in a decrease in reinvested earnings, which is our net income. Our payment load taxes contribution to the city increased to $200,000 in, I believe it was October of 23. I think I wrote 24, but I believe that happened in 23. Now our total contribution from the electric division is $1.165 million for the year. Operating expenses are expected to increase compared to the 25 budget. We have no debt, as I mentioned a minute ago. According to our rate consultant, we're in a great financial position, but a rate increase may be needed in 27 to continue to maintain and invest in the distribution system at the level we have in the past. Since our capital money available for capital expenses is dropping and our cash balance is slightly decreasing, and it's been 16 years since a rate increase, I may come to you next year and paint a picture of why that's needed. Today, I'm not asking for anything like that. I'm just letting you know that this is the way most utilities are seeing things. Costs are going up, and if rates aren't allowed to increase to match the increased cost, then you have less net income available for capital expenses, and unless you have a decent cash balance, it starts to drop. Page 14 is a graph showing our use of funds. You'll see that TVA is projected to take 77% for the power bill, and that leaves 8.8% for capital funds and taxes and operational costs and a few other slivers there of the pie. On page 15, I've given a detailed breakdown of the capital budget. We have roughly 1.6 million available for capital work this year. Our main project is the Old Taylor Road substation voltage regulation project. My hope with this voltage regulation project is that we can program it for during the demand period of the day, which is from, say, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. afternoon in the summer, and in the winter it's a little different time. But we can program it to reduce the voltage, which will essentially save us on our demand charges and pay for itself. That's the idea, is if we can somehow reduce the voltage slightly during demand periods without affecting our customers, we can save money on our power bill and have it pay for itself, and also provide consistent voltage on all of our 8 feeder circuits out of the Old Taylor Road substation, which is our main substation. It's actually owned, the land is owned by TVA, but we share the substation with Northeast and TVA, and Oxford Utilities. That's the first project. The second project, as you can see, only leaves $287,500 for overhead underground conversions. We'll try to use that wisely on the system. In years past, we've had more money available for that, but this year that number is a little bit reduced, because we need to replace our boring machine, which is the next item. It's a costly item, but it allows us to install services for customers and do some of these conversions ourselves. Our current boring machine has spent essentially half the time in the shop this past year, and when they say they fixed it, we get it back and it doesn't work right. So I think it's about 18, 20 years old, and we have a crew that's proficient in running the boring machine, so we just need to replace it so we're able to do these conversions and installations on our own without having to pay a contractor to do the work. I've got.
What's the lead time on those? Are they
So
already ready?
we'll have to, yeah, I think we could get it pretty quickly. My understanding, I think we'll have to obviously go to bid and do a reverse auction on this since it's over 75,000, and that'll probably take longer than it would to get the machine. I think they could provide us with the machine within a few months pretty easily. I've got 65,000 for distribution improvements. We'll try to address some smaller items that are in our 5-year work plan that was done by Allen and Hoschel about 4 years ago. So we're still trying to tackle a few of those items. I've got 2 service trucks in here. One to replace a meter reading truck that's completely worn out, and the other to replace, we got an electric, essentially it's an electric pickup from TVA for free during our project where we got the electric bucket truck, and we were able to get 2 electric service trucks as part of that deal for free. And one of those quit working 3 or 4 years ago, and the other one, it makes really loud noises. And it essentially, it runs off gas that charges the batteries, and it just doesn't work right. And it's quite annoying for the person driving it. And so we're gonna try to replace that and surplus that vehicle if possible. I think we'll have to share the money that we get with it with EPRI, who funded the project, but we'll work through that issue when we get there. But if I know the employee that drives that truck will be very happy if we can replace that truck that screams down the road when he drives it. But so I've heard there are some city project relocations coming, and we've got 15,000 there as kind of a placeholder. We may have to shift some money from something else to get that done if it's a costly project, but I didn't want to leave it off because I think it's important that we have money set aside to, whether it's McElroy or North Lamar or wherever it is, to be able to direct some money to those projects, because I know it'll be expected for us to get out of the way when it's time to redo those intersections. 4,000 for computer replacements. I haven't seen a list yet, but usually there's 1 or 2 computers that is out of its maintenance or warranty period, and so I've got 4,000 there. Building maintenance, I don't anticipate needing any money for that, but it's there in case there's an emergency. We've had some issues with our roof leaking. Greg's been quick to fix those issues, but it's a flat roof, and you just never know. Got a couple thousand for office furniture, and then 1,500 for warehouse tools and equipment, which we typically pick those up as we need them. But happy to answer any questions on the capital expenses or any of the rest of the budget, or go over anything in more detail that you have questions about.
That's a great summary.
Oh, thank you.
Is there any measurement that shows decreased demand in residential usage due to more efficient appliances and lighting? I mean, do you see overall we're growing?
Yeah.
But do you see
Yeah.
like a residential average use
So-
decreasing that's helping our grid as we add people to it, but the demand's going down?
I think what we'd have to do-
Everything in our houses is more efficient now.
is look at that residential average use chart. I've got one from, since I started the job, I've got a chart for that shows essentially, it goes all the way back when all the highly efficient light bulbs and appliances kind of came out onto the system. And so you can really see the drop off in the residential average use. I think ours was up over 1,100 a month. And you can see now the average for the year is like in the 900 area, 960 for our average per month. So there's an impact, at least on kilowatt hours sold. And I think that's obviously translated from demand as well. When it's really, really cold though, people go to Walmart and to buy space heaters. I mean, as long as there's a plug-in for something to go, people are gonna get warm. They can't necessarily do that in the summer. And that's why I think we have a harder time, TBA, meeting the peak in the winter than they do in the summer. Because in
It
the
takes more
winter,
energy to heat
Yeah.
than to cool,
It
and
does.
you can run a box fan for a lot less than you can run a space heater.
exactly right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have questions?
So typically we review this. If you got any questions or anything after today, please hit me up and I'll go back through anything. And then I'll come to you in June, probably the first meeting in June, and make it official if there are no serious changes. We can discuss it.
Sounds great. Thank you, Rob. All right, at this time, I'm going to ask the board to consider an executive session.
Move we consider executive session.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The board will now consider an executive session. We have 2 items. Yeah, yeah. I'm asking you to consider an executive